Away from Home by Arleta Richardson. Chapter 5. The Most Popular Boy in School. October 16th, 1889. SJ and I have joined the Airadelphian Society. Molly has belonged to it for 2 years and says they have wonderful programs of speaking and music. We meet every second Friday after school and learn the fine points of elocution from Miss Baker, the sponsor. I can't wait for the first program.
Mabel, did you see the announcement on the bulletin board in the English room?
Sarah Jane caught up with me in the hallway as we started out for noon recess.
There was nothing new there this morning. There is now. Molly saw Miss Baker putting a poster up and she's gone to see what it is. Come on, let's look.
Sarah Jane grabbed my arm and dragged me toward room 104. There were several girls standing around the board talking excitedly. The news was printed in big bold letters. Airadelphian girls, the first presentation of the year will be held in the assembly room on Friday evening, October 25th at 7:30 p.m. You may ask the young man of your choice to be your guest for this fine entertainment. Refreshments will be served.
That's less than 2 weeks away,
Molly exclaimed. We'll have to hurry.
Hurry for what?
Sarah Jane questioned.
It doesn't take that long to get to the assembly room.
Then a horrifying thought occurred to her.
We don't have to be part of this fine entertainment, do we?
Of course not, silly, Molly laughed. The society is sponsoring it. They have someone from outside for the first evening.
Whew, that's a relief,
I sighed.
I don't mind being on the program, but I want more notice than that. So why should we hurry?
Why, to ask a boy to be our guest, Molly replied. If we wait, the best fellows will be taken.
We stared at her blankly. You mean we have to walk up to some boy in school and ask him if he wants to go to the program with us?
Sarah Jane gasped. Certainly, Molly replied. You wouldn't ask someone to attend and sit by himself, would you? Haven't you ever gone anywhere with a boy before? Sarah Jane thought this over for a moment.
Not unless you count the time I had to go to the ice cream social with Wesley Patterson. Someone had to make sure he didn't demolish the cake he was bringing before he got there.
I don't think I'd count that, Molly replied.
We didn't have a large selection of boys at home to go anywhere with,
I explained.
Wesley was the only one a year behind us and Warren Carter a year ahead.
I was thinking of asking Warren, Molly confided. Whom are you going to invite?
Maybe I'll ask Thomas Charles,
Sarah Jane said.
I never thought I'd be interested in a preacher's son, but he seems nice enough. Besides, Warren lives at their house, and he says Thomas is a good fellow. Warren should know. He knows everything else. What about you, Mabel?
I doubt if little Goody has the nerve to invite anyone, a cool voice put in. If she's never been to anything more exciting than an ice cream social, she wouldn't know how to act. Clarice was looking right at me, and as usual, I could think of nothing to say. Sarah Jane, however, was not similarly afflicted.
That's where you're wrong,
she flared.
Mabel is going to ask the most popular boy in school to go with her. You should find out the facts before you jump to conclusions.
You're going to ask Russ Bradley? Clarice sneered. You're wasting your time. He'll wait for me to invite him. Besides, what would you have to say to someone as sophisticated as Russ?
You needn't think you're the only knowledgeable girl in school, Clarice Owens,
Sarah Jane replied.
Mabel can carry on a conversation with anyone here.
Clarice sniffed and walked away. Sarah Jane glared at her retreating back.
I'd feel better if I'd carried on that conversation, I told Sarah Jane. Why in the world did you say I was going to invite Russ Bradley? Because she needed to be brought down a peg, and that was the first thought that came to me.
Well, I'm waiting to hear your second thought that will get me out of this, I said.
I have no intention of asking him. You'll have to, Mabel. Clarice will have it all over school by the time we finish eating dinner. You don't want to look bad, do you? I don't see that I have a choice. How would I look if he turned me down? Really, Sarah Jane, why didn't you just speak for yourself? I wasn't the one she called Little Miss Goody,
Sarah Jane replied.
No one could call my best friend names and get away with it. That's right, Molly agreed. Clarice is becoming unbearable. It would serve her right if Russ did accept your invitation. What is the matter with you two? I demanded. You know I can't ask him. He'd laugh in my face. There's always the chance that he won't, Molly said. But you know Clarice and her friends will make life miserable for you if you do back down. My own friends have already taken care of that, I muttered. I'd be grateful if you didn't try to do me any more favors. I was surprised when Russ fell into step beside me as I walked out of math class that afternoon. That was a rough lesson today, wasn't it? Did you have any trouble with the second problem? It took me a long time to solve, I replied. I hope we don't have many more like it. I have too many other things to study. I've noticed you and Warren Carter stay pretty close to one another in percentages. Have you always competed with each other? Since we first learned to count, I told him. He had a year's head start on me, but I can still give him a good battle. Do you prefer doing battle with your friends, or do you sometimes have a good time? He didn't give me time to answer before he continued. Speaking of good times, I heard a rumor that you were going to invite me to the Airadelphian program. His eyes twinkled, and I had the feeling he was making fun of me. It was strictly a rumor, I replied firmly. I had no intention of asking you. We walked along in silence for a moment, and then I glanced at him. However, I wouldn't want to hurt your feelings if you were counting on it. Would you care to be my guest for the entertainment a week from Friday? I would be delighted, Miss O'Dell. He gave an exaggerated bow and then ran off across the campus to his class. I was late and had to hurry to dress for physical culture. The others were out in the field and starting the badminton game before I got there. I was paired off with Matilda Evans, the best player in class, so I had no time to think of anything but trying to keep the shuttlecock in the air. Molly and Sarah Jane cornered me as soon as the class was over. We saw you talking to Russ. Did you ask him? What did you talk about? We talked about how hard the math assignment was today, I replied. They waited. Well, Sarah Jane prodded me. Is that all? What about the program? I should think you would have plenty to do finding your own escorts. Haven't you already done enough for me? Oh, Mabel, sometimes you can be so infuriating. Sarah Jane stamped her foot. Come on, Molly, it's not our fault if she goes to the program alone. They turned to march away and I burst out laughing. Molly whirled around. You did ask him and he said yes. Oh, I can't wait to see Clarice's face when she finds out. I can wait a long time for that, I said soberly. It suddenly occurred to me that I had provided Clarice with another reason to dislike me. Why can't I do something to show her I'd rather be her friend? I'd be more than happy to have her go with Russ instead of me. Don't waste your sympathy on Clarice, Molly advised me. She gets what she wants. Just be grateful when she isn't stepping on you to get it. It will only be for one evening, I said to Sarah Jane later. I think he just accepted on a dare. I'm sure he was laughing at me, and probably his friends will too. I wouldn't care who laughed if I could go with a handsome boy like that. Sarah Jane sighed. I'm going to ask Thomas. He's all right, but he's, well, just Thomas. Don't expect me to feel sorry for you, I said. You're the one who started this whole thing. Clarice didn't speak to me the next week, not even to make a snide remark. It made me a little nervous. I have the feeling she's planning something to make me look bad, I told the girls. It's not like her to let something like this just go by. I wouldn't be surprised if she persuaded Russ to change his mind and take her after all. She wouldn't dare, Molly declared. She thought he'd turn you down, but it didn't work that way. Clarice has lost this round. There's nothing she can do to ruin your evening. As it turned out, Clarice didn't need to worry about ruining anything. I almost succeeded in doing more than she could have ever thought or hoped. What are you wearing tonight, Mabel? Sarah Jane asked on the morning of the program. My blue wool dress, I answered her. I've been saving it for a special occasion. What will you wear? This wine-colored one. Ma said it was strictly for Sundays, but I think she would make an exception in this case. Besides, isn't it great to be making our own decisions? We don't have to ask anyone if we can go tonight.
The day dragged by slowly, but it was finally time for the last class. Usually, I enjoyed physical culture, but today I was in a hurry to get home. Mabel, would you help Matilda fold the badminton net and put things away, please? Miss Baker requested. I have a meeting to attend. We hurried as fast as we could, but Sarah Jane was waiting impatiently when we finished.
Come on, don't stop to get dressed. Just put your skirt on over your bloomers and we'll go home the back way. It's quicker and no one is going to see us.
I bundled my clothes and books together, and we ran across the back field to the path through the woods. Sarah Jane scrambled over the fence and turned to wait for me. I threw my books across, but I didn't want my clothes on the ground, so I tucked them under one arm and tried to hold my skirt up with my free hand. It didn't work. When I jumped down, the back of my skirt caught on the top rail. A loud rip told me that the skirt and I had parted company.
Oh no! I cried. Help me get this off!
May I help? A friendly voice said. And before I could catch my breath, Russ Bradley had freed my skirt and handed it to me. With a wave of his hand, he was gone, and I stood rooted to the ground. Sarah Jane turned me around and picked up my books.
Wrap that thing around you and hurry up, she said. We're going to be late. We haven't got too long to get ready. I'm not going anywhere, I said woodenly. I'm never going anywhere again as long as I live. I was standing here in my bloomers. Of course you're going. Sarah Jane pulled me along. Just be thankful they weren't your underdrawers. He's seen girls in gym bloomers before. Not me, he hasn't. I've never been so embarrassed in my life. I couldn't show my face at that program. I'll probably not even go back to school. My mind was made up, but I had reckoned without Sarah Jane and Letty. They appeared at the door of our room as I lay across the bed, enjoying my misery. Come, Mabel, Letty said briskly. Get up and bathe and dress. I'll help you with your hair. I meekly followed instructions, and when Thomas and Russ arrived, we were ready. The incident at the fence may have been a bad dream, but nothing was said about it then or later. The first program of the year was a real success, I told Ma in a letter. I asked a boy named Russ Bradley to be my guest, and we had a fine time. To Sarah Jane's credit, I will say that she didn't tell anyone what happened. Not even Molly. Now that's a true friend. End of chapter 5.